Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. Testing 1, 2.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special city council meeting. Today's Tuesday, June 27th. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Council President Miller,
Present.
Councilor Anderbaugh,
Present.
Councilwoman Anthony is absent, Councilman Espinal, Senior Deputy Majority Leader Gonzalez,
Present.
Councilwoman Graves is absent, Deputy Majority Leader Harris,
Present.
Councilwoman Peterson,
Present.
Council President Pro Tempore Pichardo,
Present.
Councilor Royas,
Present.
Councilwoman Ryan. Present. Majority Whip Sanchez,
Present.
Majority Leader Taylor,
Here.
Councilwoman Ana Vargas, Councilman Oscar Vargas.
Present.
You have 13 present and 2 absent. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Tonight, the invocation will be given by Deputy Majority Leader Harris. Will everyone please rise?
Heavenly Father, as I stand before you tonight in honor, Lord, and pray for our city of Providence, I ask you this summer, Father, to bring safety upon our children, Lord. I ask you also, Father, to protect us in the time of need, Father. Father, provide food for the hunger. Place a shelter for the person with no roof over their head, Father. Father, we ask all these things in Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.
And the Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Majority Leader Taylor.
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please read item 1.
Madam President,
Majority Leader.
motion to waive the readings of items 1 and 2.
Second, Madam President.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Madam Clerk, please read item 3 into the record.
Madam President,
Oh,
Sorry.
please note 1 and 2 is received. Thank you.
So noted.
And please read item 3, Majority Leader.
Madam President, motion to waive the reading of item 3.
Second.
Motion to waive the reading has been made and second. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Madam President,
Majority Leader.
motion to substitute Exhibit A.
Second, Madam President.
Motion's been made and seconded to substitute Exhibit A. I'm going to ask the solicitor to please do a brief description of the substitution.
Okay, the substitution includes 2 amendments on 3, paragraph 3 of the lease. It adds a requirement for submitting annual reports in accordance with 6A. That would be a requirement for extension of the lease. And it references section 6A, where the lessee is required to provide the city clerk with annual reports outlining progress towards the completion of projects identified in its facility improvement plans.
Thank you. Tina. Any discussion on this motion for the substitution? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Madam President,
Majority Leader Taylor.
motion to pass item 3 on a roll call vote as amended.
Second, Madam President.
Motion's been made in second. Discussion on this motion.
Madam President,
Councilor Royas.
I want to share some prepared remarks today, as I believe today is a pivotal moment for this council in terms of dealing with matters of public education in the city. And perhaps this moment today is a sign of what is to come as stewards of this city. The process surrounding the lease agreement has been turbulent and is essential for the viewers present in this chamber and watching from home to understand how we reached this point. On June 2nd, we received the initial achievement first lease, which proposed a 40-year term to occupy Charles Forts Elementary School. On Wednesday, June 7th, during the ongoing and time-consuming budget negotiations with the mayor's administration, the lease was presented to the ordinance committee, allowing members only 3 business days to review and evaluate a 40-year agreement. The committee was informed for the first time about the pending June 30th deadline and faced the pressure that voting against a 40-year lease will leave Achievement First students and families without a school. The urgency of the situation created a sense of being backed into a corner. Before I proceed, I would like to directly address the staff and parents of Achievement First who might be here today. The administration and Achievement First have been aware of the June 30th deadline since January, which has placed this council in an unfair and challenging position. It is important to question why they waited this long to present this to the council. As a public official, I stated that I cannot commit to any long-term lease extending beyond my 70th birthday. Regardless of the industry involved, it would be irresponsible to make such a decision considering the ever-changing educational landscape in our city. Additionally, it is crucial to note that while Achievement First had the opportunity to testify before the ordinance committee, no such invitation was extended to the staff of Alfred Lima. After extensive discussions, the vote on the 40-year lease was delayed, leaving many of us with unanswered questions. The process felt noticeably one-sided, creating the perception that Achievement First drafted the lease and handed it over to the mayor's staff. It felt rushed and forced upon us, almost intentionally so. As I have emphasized to my colleagues and publicly, this is not the way we conduct business in our city. Our role as a council is not to simply rubber stamp decisions made by the administration, made by Achievement First, or made by any other industry seeking approval. We have a duty to exercise due diligence because we genuinely care. This is not personal, this is good government. Achievement First has justified their request for a longer lease by emphasizing their plan to make capital improvements to the building. However, and I need to stress this, to this day, we have not been provided with a substantive list of these improvements, as no needs assessment has been conducted. Instead, Achievement First insists on a long-term lease to conduct a needs assessment, which would reveal their capital improvement plan. While I may not be a financial expert or claim to be the most intelligent person, this approach strikes me as counterintuitive and illogical. If they desire a long-term commitment, it is reasonable to present with it's reasonable to present with a concrete plan first. I also feel to address, I think, what is the elephant in the room, and that is this ongoing debate between charter schools and traditional public schools, despite our reluctance to do so. Let me remind my colleagues of the unfortunate closure and displacement of Child Forts Elementary School, its students and staff during the previous administration's tenure. In June of 2021, staff and families at Charles Forts were informed that their school would no longer be available to them. This institution offered a unique specialized bilingual program from pre-K through second grade. Subsequently, the mayor's administration quietly entered into a licensing agreement with Achievement First, allowing them to occupy the Charles Forts Elementary School building, which is shared with Alfred Lima Elementary School. While we cannot change the past or rectify the mismanagement of the previous administration, it is deeply disappointing, misleading, and disingenuous when Achievement First informs their staff and students that we intend to close down the school they moved into, fully aware of the contentious nature surrounding it, simply because we require additional time for a thorough vetting of the lease. Furthermore, today's vote comes at a time when the Rhode Island Department of Education has closed down neighborhood schools due to disrepair and disinvestment, while the mayor has publicly indicated that charter schools are interested in occupying those supposedly uninhabitable buildings. And so my question is, will those who support this lease today share that same outrage if that happens? Will they speak out for the displaced students at College Laurel and Broad Street? I believe in an educational environment where both public charter schools and traditional public schools can coexist. Unfortunately, what has led us to this point with past and recent decisions made by the city and RIDE does not reflect this ideal, and is crucial for us to remain watchful regarding the recent decisions that have unnecessarily created a divide between charter schools in public schools. Today, we are presented with a revised lease agreement shortened to 25 years from the initial 40-year term. I still believe that 25 years is too long, as it would extend beyond my 57th birthday. Locking ourselves into such a long-term commitment is irresponsible and avoids accountability for decisions that could impact our educational landscape when we are no longer in politics to confront potential scrutiny. The vote on this revised lease was originally scheduled for last Thursday, but was delayed a second time due to the late delivery of the revised version, leaving council members with inadequate time for thorough consideration. The decision to postpone the vote was the correct one. Since the introduction of the 25-year lease last week, it has undergone several revisions, bringing about some positive changes. These include provisions holding Achievement First accountable for providing a needs assessment and mandating their commitment to making capital improvements. Failure to fulfill these obligations could potentially result in a lease breach. While I acknowledge these additions as incremental improvements, I still have concerns and confusion regarding the proposal of a long-term lease without having the opportunity to review their needs assessment plan beforehand. So considering the length of the proposed lease, the turbulent process up until this point, and despite the incremental improvements made since the original 40-year lease, I will be voting against this lease tonight, and I hope my colleagues will join me. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion on the motion? Councilman Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam President. So the first thing I would like to say is just pointing out the false narrative that was portrayed. And I'm not sure if it came from Achievement First directly or someone in the city, but our intention as this council was never to kick any students out of a working building. Nunca queríamos nosotros quitar ningún estudiante de la clase. Our responsibility as city councilors is to make sure that the city is doing the proper vetting when it comes to any leases, whether it's a school, a daycare. That's our responsibility, to making sure that the city is getting a fair, equitable lease. And when this came to us, like my colleague mentioned, there was obviously questions that arose. And some of those questions for me is the capital improvement plan. Like my colleague said, there is no capital improvement plan right now. And Achievements First, from my understanding, argument for that is they need a long-term lease first. So then our next question is, all right, what communication or what documentation can you show us to city officials that you are in any sort of talks with a lender that would provide that type of money for capital improvement plans? And up to this day, we haven't seen any of those documentations. Right now, we're just taking Achievement First for whatever it is, for their word that they are in talks, and maybe they are. But I think as city councilors, it would be irresponsible to commit to a long-term lease without seeing any sort of proof of financial talks for long-term finances for such capital improvement plans. So those are my main questions up to this point. Like my colleague said, it seemed like it was rushed. Whether that's intentional or not, that's not how I, as a city councilor, will operate going forward. We can't change what's been in the past, but we can take a stance today and determine how we're going to operate as a city. So just to circle back to the first point, there's nothing stopping Achievement First and the mayor's administration from entering a one-year lease while we figure this out the next year together to find a solution that works for everyone. Everyone in this room wants the best for our students. They're the future. Anytime I can speak to anyone, whether it's a crowd of 2 or a crowd of 50, my biggest message is always, make sure you find a youth in your community and go above and beyond and help them out. Believe in them. That's all our youth need is someone to believe in them. So that's my biggest message today is I'll be voting no on this, not because I want to see students misplaced or don't like charter schools. That's not the conversation we're having today. It's just that there's questions that have not been answered, and it would be very irresponsible as a city councilor to commit the city for a long-term lease. Last point, just a quick example of what happens when we commit to long-term lease. Right now, if you want to do city business when it comes to inspections, when it comes to if you want to visit the planning department, you have to go to 444 Westminster Street. They're not located here. And from my understanding, our legal team has looked at that lease that was signed decades ago because we're paying extremely high rent in it. And we can't get out of that lease. So that's something that we should use as a learned experience going forward is to make sure that the city's protected with these types of leases going forward. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Further discussion, Councilman Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for those important remarks, Councilor Sanchez and also Councilor Royas. I really appreciate everyone who's joined us in the chambers today. And as a councilman who has some institutional knowledge of this process during my last term, I just want to share a little bit about this process. And also as a teacher, I just want to say I really appreciate the engagement from the families tonight and how important this is for our kids and how important it is for our children to have robust learning environments. And I believe that parents should have the autonomy and the choice about where their children should go so that they can succeed. You know, I reviewed the terms of this agreement, and I know folks have been trying to reach a consensus on this, but I am very, very concerned about the shuttering of public schools and the closure of certain schools. And I've been sounding the alarm on this issue for years now, in fact. And I believe as a body, we need more transparency from RIDE and PPSD about school closures well in advance, as opposed to at the 11th hour. I think our kids deserve it, our parents deserve it, and our teachers deserve it. And I want to give you some real hard facts because I think this is critically important for the public to know. In 2019, there was an MOA that approved capital improvement project funding for Feinstein Elementary at Broad Street at the value of $4.4 million. In 2021, that MOA was adjusted to $2.9 million. And then in 2023, that was adjusted to $1.7 million. So over the course of several years, RIDE was making unilateral decisions without this body to determine that that school should receive less funding. That's not the only school. So if we look at Carl G. Loro, they were slated to receive $28 million in the initial 2019 MOA. In 2021, that value was reduced to $4,000. It went from $28 million to $4,000 without any oversight from the council, without any oversight from the people who should be in those school communities, without any oversight from the families, without any engagement whatsoever. We can't allow that to happen. And I think that we need serious transparency and change around these school closures because let's face it, if you look at these numbers, we are seeing the biggest transfer of public school market share to charters in our city's history. I'm going to say that again. We are seeing the biggest transfer of public school market share to charters in our city's history. And I, in addition to, I'm sure, our families, would love to see more transparency And RIDE coming before this council body, coming before the council members who represent those communities, and coming before the community before they make those unilateral changes. So I appreciate every single person who has come out to support this. And I know you want what's best for your kids, and we will fight like hell as a council body to ensure that we're doing everything for our kids. The question here is about transparency. And I think the broad overreach from Providence Public Schools and from the Rhode Island Department of Education is something that cannot continue to happen without oversight from this body. So again, I appreciate everyone who's come out to this. And I just want to say that we need more transparency. We need more notice on any lease transfers or school closures. And to be clear to all the families that are here in this audience, my vote is for that sole reason. It's not a vote against the families. It's not a vote against the kids. It's not a vote against charter versus public. It's a vote regarding transparency. And I, like my colleagues, would like to see more transparency in this process. And for that reason, I will be voting no. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Peterson.
Thank you, Council President, for the opportunity to speak on this. First off, I wanna thank the administration and the council staff for all that was done to get this to the council floor as it is today. I'd like to start my remarks by saying that this isn't, and I'm sharing the same sentiment as my fellow councilors. This isn't a conversation about public versus charter. And we're not looking to close achievement first. Nosotros no queremos cerrar las escuelas. Tenga eso por seguro de todos nosotros. I'm actually a believer of school choice. I believe that families should have the right and the opportunity to make the very best decisions for their children. But this isn't that conversation yet. And this isn't what we are going to be discussing here or we're debating here on the floor today. I know for a fact that no counselor on the city council would ever want to displace children. The fact of the matter, very simply, is the lease at hand. The ordinance committee was originally presented with a 40-year lease for Achievement First Promesa School. At a time where we've literally just approved an increase on taxes to our homeowners, our responsibility as counselors is to vet everything that is presented to us and question whether the opportunity is a sound investment for our city. Committing the city to long-term investments like these should be reviewed with time and understanding of what we've done in the past, how we can advance the opportunity in the present, and what benefit it provides our communities in the future. Achievement First was given multiple opportunities to discuss investment plans for the building as they've been able to enjoy the facility for the last 3 years. Is it not responsible for us to ask our city's business partners how they intend to show a good faith partnership with us? In my opinion, when we as a city are providing a lease with a chance at a strong and robust partnership, the partner in question should come to the table with their ideas for the same. Warm, safe, and dry should be a starting point, as we should be offering all students, public, private, or charter, with modern buildings that bring Providence learning into the future. Again, this commitment should be for all students, full stop. Counselors, what we have here today is something that's actually much more palpable and a better investment. What was presented to us in ordinance 3 weeks ago was not. Our level of scrutiny was necessary to remind everyone that council is not here to rubber stamp requests from anyone. At this very moment, I'm still left pondering several questions that have yet to be answered. I look forward to receiving the answers on these and the materials that were promised to us in committee after this meeting. Public buildings are funded by taxpayer dollars and are meant to serve the broader community. This charter, as an independently managed entity, is limited to what information we are privy to, or limits the information that we're privy to, and we're left to figure out how to effectively allocate our resources. As a city, we must have a discerning eye, because right now it's literally all the leverage we have. This process has taught me that Achievement First stands committed to limit the information they're willing to give us. And yet we're left mitigating the fallout as the conversation rears its ugly head and our newest public schools are being closed. Our public school closures are recent. This isn't the way I want to handle our school investments and how we build back community trust in our city's educational future. Counselors, I plead with you to make this decision. As you make this decision, please consider the impact of our decisions as we plan the educational landscape of our city. Our decisions affect the daily lives of every individual that lives in our neighborhoods. For me, this vote tonight is still plagued by these leftover questions and lack of follow-through on behalf of this organization. Situations like these perpetuate a continued disdain for our local government and a continued lack of trust. As a new counselor, my responsibility is to ensure the decisions that I make are the best for my neighborhood and for the city. As such, I will go on the record tonight opposing this vote and saying that I'm not interested in seeing any leases until we have a long-term plan for all our students in all of our schools. That is public and charter. I will not be a part of any continued fragmentation and imbalance of our educational infrastructure, but I will absolutely seek every opportunity to work towards a solution. Since charter schools are public schools, they too can share in the investments we need to make to modernize our buildings. Since these newest school closures are already showing interest by charter partners, I look forward to seeing the investment plans on these schools, since part of the reason for closing them was because they're not structurally safe for continued use. I hope my fellow counselors will consider joining me in the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Espinal.
Thank you, Madam President. I will keep my remarks brief, as I feel that a lot has been said. And I do feel that all the councilors mean well. And I also agree that this perhaps may have not been the best way to introduce the signing of a lease, the review of a lease. But once this was heard in the ordinance committee, there were concerns from a couple of councilors, and they brought that up. And I can only thank them for bringing this up and for their so much energy that they put into this. But the administration and the council office quickly jumped on this and vetted this lease, and they come up with some positive changes, some very good changes. What we have here today, it's very different from what was presented, and it's something that I completely agree with. We have a lease that is 20 years, 25, but it's not unique to this achievement first. We also have the same type of lease at other locations. And the work that they have done is specifically speaking at 370 Hafer Avenue, shows that within the first just over 10 years, they put in over $10 million of investment. So they have a record that speaks for itself. And this lease here actually guarantees $2.5 million every 5 years. It also guarantees an annual report. It guarantees oversight. I think it's a very good lease. So therefore, yes, I will be voting for this. And I do ask my colleague to do the same, because we have over 400 kids to educate. They need to know exactly where they're going in September and where they are. Great things are happening. And I think I rise in support of what they're doing and in support of this lease, because it should be predictable. Our kids' education should be predictable. They should know exactly where they will be, what type of education they'll be getting. This investment, this oversight assures that they're in the right place with the right lease. So I like to conclude by thanking the parents and staff of Achievement First that are here tonight, and everyone that took the time to come here and see exactly what is debated, what happens here, and how our local government works. So thank you, everyone, for being here, and I urge my colleague to support this. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion? Councilman Taylor.
I wasn't going to speak, but I'm going to speak. So as everybody knows or doesn't know, that the school that we're talking about is in my ward. And I haven't really, we're talking apples and oranges here, I believe, because a lot of the complaints that we're talking about against the school itself, we're including the possible closing of, or the talk of closing of Broad Street School. We're talking of closing Gilbert Stewart Middle School. We're talking in 2019 that some of the people that are against it. And if we all remember, the past mayor and his administration lost the schools and gave it to the state. So I'm being honest, I've been kind of disconnected since that's happened because we really don't have that much of a say, but we do have a say on this one. And I think it's very important. We talk about, it could have been done better. Yes, it could have. It could have been done better. But I'm going to go back. I'm going to let this administration get a break and go back to the last administration and blame them because I'm not sure that they knew everything. You know, did they know the June 30th deadline? They probably should have, and they did, you know, but, I agree with my colleague, the chair of ordinance, that these kids got to know where they're going. There's 360 or 70 kids now. Now it's going to be 411 or something. They left school. I've got more positive outcomes of that school. And if we look deja vu, I'm going to go back 10 years. I wasn't a council person. Maybe I'm going to put you on the spot, Councilwoman Ryan or Councilwoman Harris. 10 years ago, the same conversation came up. I wasn't here. I know you guys were here. And I know for a fact the past council president, it was in his ward, the Achievement First on Hartford Avenue. And you ask him today, he would not change his vote. He is so happy for that school that he made that vote and the council made that vote. And if you look, that school's probably second behind classical school because we talk about the money that they're going to invest. Okay, that school needs a lot of money invest, but I want the investment of the kids. And from what I see from Achievement First and at Hartford Avenue, they've committed themselves to invest in those kids. From the parents that I hear that have reached out to me that live in my ward, that take their kids to that school, that's the most common thing they said, that they're invested in their kids and they feel happy that their kids are going to that school. So they can, if they want, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know 10 years ago, that was a big complaint when Perry Middle School closed about, we're worried about Achievement First. I think they have a track record and I think they've come to the table. Maybe we should, you know, like I think things could have been better, but everything that we asked for, I feel that they addressed in some fashion. Is it perfect? No, but there's other school leases. I'll use my colleague. The school that he works at did a 40-year lease. He's not a councilman there, I understand, but that's how they have to invest in these things, whether it's a school, whether it's the Port of Providence, whatever these TSAs and things are working for. Not, this isn't a TSA, but I'm just saying that they have to know what they're doing to secure funding. And you can't give them a year and a year and a year because these families out here with their kids, they need to know on September, are their kids going to go back to that school or where they're going? And if we vote no tonight, there's a possibility that they cannot go back to that school. And I don't think that's fair. And I think the Achievement First has been fair to us. And I'm going to go back to 2013, look at the record that school has done in Hartford Avenue, that nobody gave it a shot back then. It was the same arguments, the same thing. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Councilman Ryan, but you were here. So, and Councilwoman Harris, there was the same arguments. And if you look at today, if you talk to parents in that school, they're very happy with how that school's turned out. So thank you very much. I will be voting yes for this.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion? Councilwoman Harris.
Thank you, Madam President, for allowing me this time. I also did not want to speak, but I see the seriousness of this matter tonight, and I think it's very important that I weigh in on just observing and the conversations that have been had from the time it have left the ordinance committee. First of all, I want to thank the administration for bringing it from behind closed doors in some agreement that this council did not know about last term or before that. Second, I want to say Achievement First is not a brand new school that is here. Achievement First have been in some kind of agreement with the city, but not a great agreement. In fact, when it was brought to the ordinance committee, I thought that was the right thing to do. I don't think any of us as council people should be involved in anything that is done and not done transparent before this council body. So I appreciate that. Second of all, I really understood and engaged in conversation with my council colleagues around the accountability of the school and the fact of the capital assessment plan. First of all, I do know that when you are developing anything, you have to have a timeline with it. I think with the opportunity that we've been able to give through this new amendment to this lease that we received out of the ordinance committee today, and the fact that we do have all of those engraved inside of this lease agreement, which is 5 years to prove to this council that there is a plan. There was no such thing before. In fact, I understood one of my colleagues asked about the plan. They said, we don't have a plan, we got a wish list, but we can't be bounding that building on a wish list. I also want to say out loud, like I said back then, the city is not a good landlord. I'm gonna say it one more time. The city is not good landlords. So if we find opportunities for people to occupy these buildings and be able to put the resource and the capital into the buildings that these deserve to be in these buildings and make them suitable, so let it be. I believe even the schools that's closing, I want to say as a city, I want to feel a little bit of responsibility of that because we are not good landlords of buildings, city buildings. Second of all, I want to say that we have came to a point right now where this is no longer a conversation between public and private, public and charter, private too, public, charter, and private, any of that. This is a conversation about a lease that was not done right, but have been brought before this council. And it was brought before this council in a rapid kind of way that sort of upset a lot of us. I had a lot of opportunity to talk to parents that are not a part of Achievement First, and I've had a lot of opportunities to talk to people that's of Achievement First. In doing that, I realized one thing, that we got to start somewhere and start to do this right. I agree with my colleagues that have said this from the very beginning out of the ordinance committee, that it was not done right. I appreciate that. You're right. From now on, from this day on, Achievement First have brought this matter before us, and we will not entertain any more of these schools in this manner. Never again as a city. I appreciate that. And second of all, I want to say that going third or fourth or fifth that I'm saying is that right now we have a decision to make, and the decision is made on the fact that there is much more accountability than what we started out with in the ordinance committee. That accountability is that new amendment that was added, excuse me, even the clerks gonna have an opportunity to know whether this reporting is happening and whether Achievement First is being of their word by this last amendment to it. I think that really made me understand that I'm doing the right thing. I will be voting for this tonight. I am doing the right thing by doing that, simply because of the fact that second part of it really gave me a little bit more leverage to say, and yes, you guys will be around here 5 years from now. You have a right to look at this thing and say, this is what we did in this meeting. This is what we did, and you're not being a good steward. You're not being a good steward of this lease. So you have an opportunity to do that. So I appreciate that all have went in this, all the debate has went into it. I appreciate the families for being out tonight. I appreciate all the families that have called me. So I appreciate that tonight, but I will be voting in favor of this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any further? Councilwoman Ryan.
Thank you very much, Council President, and thank you to all my colleagues who have expressed this evening very compelling remarks. And I would like to say, as a senior member of the council, that anytime you talk about children, you get us all riled up. And rightfully so. But tonight, I'd like to thank the chairman of the ordinance committee for your leadership on a very hot topic. And you are absolutely correct in your remarks. This is not what came out of the ordinance committee. It has been worked on further, which is what we do. So the process really does work. I heard my other colleagues talk about, besides my age, but on the council. I heard my other colleagues talk about oversight and responsibility to the contract, to the lease. This new amended document provides that. It has a 5-year option for renewal. It has 1-year annual reviews. So those were added after it came out of committee. And those enhance this document tremendously. And let us all, no matter how passionate we feel about our children, let us recognize that our job here tonight and what is before us and our council rules dictate that we can't, this isn't a commentary on charter schools versus public schools versus private schools. This is about a lease. And our responsibility, as our majority leader expressed, is to put our best foot forward and make sure that this is a safe, reasonable, prudent lease for the city to engage in. And it is. And it is because of the work in the ordinance committee, and it is because of the work of the council staff, the administration, the solicitor's office. So that's what we need to celebrate tonight. And that is what we're voting on. This isn't a commentary on how we feel about public schools, charter schools, or whatever. It's a lease agreement, and they can't work with a 1-year lease for obvious reasons. They're never going to be able to draw capital. One of the reasons why Triggs Golf Course had such issues with maintaining the facility over the years was because we just kept increasing, giving them another year and another year and another year. You can't plan as any organization with a 1-year lease. So this isn't a 40-year lease. It's a 25-year lease with 5-year options. The contract is sound, it's reasonable, it's fair. And most importantly, that's what we're voting on tonight. So again, I support it, and I urge my other colleagues to do the same. And
Thank
again, thank you to the ordinance committee for your hard work on this topic.
Thank you, Councilwoman. President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam President. First, let me just say that I will be voting in the affirmative on this issue. But I will also say that this is also, and reaffirm also that it is about our kids, it is about our parents, and no parent will ever not get in a lottery to put their kid into the best school. Prior to 2010, the discussion around education was about that there were no charter schools. It was about Catholic and public schools. I was around. I was in the General Assembly. My mission, in a sense, going into the General Assembly was about closing the achievement gap between whites and Latino and African American and minority community. There was no other alternative for public school. Now today, we are talking about the lease, and it is a lease for a charter school. It is a lease that a charter school is going to be there for the next 20 years, and we're not going to be there, but it's a discussion about the equal but separate. The reality is that within the school, they will have different administration, different funding, and I hope, and I plead with you as colleagues, as I said, I'm going to vote in favor of it because this actually also helps to reduce the achievement gap. But I plead with my colleagues for us to engage seriously about the education system in the city of Providence and in our community. When you look at the charter schools or in the South Side, as I was quickly counting, there's already 5 in the South Providence compared to 6 public schools. So there's a balance already. So I ask you, in a sense, to think about, yes, you're affirming this lease. It has improved, and I commend the leadership of Councilman Justin Roya and also Shelley Peterson, because had brought to my attention, in essence, issues that, in a sense, that has helped us vet more these type of contracts and policies. And I think that as we're moving forward, in the educational forum, and I know the president has talked about getting us to take also a role within education. The fact of the matter is that these Achievement First is a mayoral school. It started and pushed by mayors, including the former mayor, including all the mayors, because they believe in closing the achievement gap. Now we have to take it seriously to be able to step forward, take an assessment. Of course, your parents are gonna call us and demand better schools and more charter schools because they're showing improvement. I think that we have to step up and have a real dialogue, especially now that we don't have an oversight of the public school system and quote unquote, we're gonna get it next year. We have to make sure that we keep this in mind. And as I'm closing, I wanna go back to the Achievement First that borderline Gilbert Stewart and Lima and Forge. The fact is that that's the ground for 2 public schools and a charter school sandwiched in between. And further down the line, one that's coming online, which is the high school for Achievement First on 206 Elmwood Avenue. I think that all those issues on education is going to be a very robust conversation that we all have to engage in a committee and demand from the schools, including the charter schools, to bring clear and precise proposals before this committee and not urge us to vote in an immediacy. And you can see how this lease went from 40 years to 25 years with 5 years interval and 6 months of you got to come up with all the improvements within 6 months or else. So with all that said, I am going to vote for it, but also with that sort of a mixed emotions there. But I want to make sure that people understand that we're all for about closing this achievement gap here in the city of Providence and the state of Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Pro Tem. Any counselors who haven't yet spoken who'd like to speak? All right, Councilman Gonz. Oh, I'm so sorry. Councilman Vargas, please.
Can I go first? Thank you, Manager. Rising to vote yes on this particular lease because I wish to own a lot of buildings and rent it the way this lease is right now. I wish. And I'm worried about the 500 kids that they waiting to be okay and to have a school where they can go back and have a great vacation, not thinking to where am I going to go back to school or waiting for a phone call saying which school they're going to send them over. It's like my colleague said, as the city is not a good landlord. I have a building in my community is falling apart. Guess who owns it? The city. It's great to have like a nonprofit to take over this building and keep it up. At the same time, teaching our children a great education for a better future of our city. And I will vote yes. And I wish the parents a great vacation. And don't worry, you will get a building after this.
Thank you, Councilman. Any counselors who haven't spoken yet? All right, Councilman Goncalves.
Thank you, Madam President. I really appreciate this substantive conversation. And I just want to state for the record, because I think it's important for people to hear this, that to your point, Councilman, the administration did actually do a much better job than the last administration by bringing this proposal before the council, whereas the last administration completely steamrolled the council and they didn't actually bring this before us at all. So I do want to thank Mayor Smiley and the administration for all of their hard work. I also want to thank the chairman of the ordinance committee. I know that this was a very contentious issue and I really appreciate his leadership. I do want to say, however, and reiterate this, that I'm voting, and I think our colleagues would agree here, against this process. So bringing this to us at the 11th hour, not allowing us to have enough time to vet it, is the issue at hand. We support these families, we support their community, we support these students. We do not want them to be displaced. So I just want to be crystal clear on that. But what we did last time was we extended the lease for 1 year. And we could have made that decision this time around. And I totally understand that in order to do capital improvement projects, you need to have the adequate amount of time to be able to plan for those. But what we could have done as a body simultaneously is say, look, we'll extend your lease for another year. And why don't you provide us with a plan on how you intend to improve the school community and the infrastructure moving forward? So that could have been an option on the table as well. And I think for the record, it's important to acknowledge that. And I appreciate all of the testimony that's been given by all of my colleagues, and I respect your decision dearly. I think in the future, we should, as a body, ensure that we are expecting utmost transparency around any school closure or any lease transfer. And I just want to state that for the record, and I appreciate everyone who has shared their remarks this evening.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further discussion?
Madam President,
Counselor.
I'm talking everyone's ear off. I just want to also to the counselor's point he just made. I want to just echo again that my ideal scenario would be a more transparent process where we would grant Achievement First a 1 year lease with the real serious commitment for a longer term lease. That was, for a number of counselors, that was our goal. This process was the pace at which it was being shoved through the council was just, in my view, inappropriate and lacked good government practices. So for the record, I understand that a 1 year lease will not provide Achievement First with the long-term plan that aligns with their finances. We're not saying that. Of course, that wouldn't be the case. What we're saying is, let's go with a 1 year lease with the real commitment in the next few months to create a lease that is inclusive of all voices. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council President Miller,
Aye.
Councilor Anderbois,
No.
Councilwoman Anthony is absent. Councilman Espinal,
Aye.
Senior Deputy Majority Leader Gonzalez,
Nay.
Councilwoman Graves is absent. Deputy Majority Leader Harris,
Aye.
Councilwoman Peterson,
Nay.
Council President Pro Tempore Pichardo,
Yes.
Councilor Royas,
Nay.
Councilwoman Ryan,
Yes.
Majority Whip Sanchez,
Nay.
Majority Leader Taylor,
Yes.
Councilwoman Ana Vargas. I'm sorry, what? Councilman Oscar Vargas.
Yes.
You have 8 ayes, 5 nays, 2 absent. The motion carries. The matter is approved on a roll call vote as amended.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Majority Leader.
If there's no further business, I make a motion that we adjourn in memory of retired firefighter Gerald Penta and Tim Scanlon.
Second, Madam President.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. We are adjourned.
And
Thank-
real quickly, Madam President, I'd like to wish everybody a healthy and safe July 4th.
Thank you, Majority Leader.